Hello, welcome. This is Debbie, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I am so happy and excited. I know I use that word every time. I'm so excited to bring you today's guest. Vicky Graham and I met through a coaching program, and I was following her in what she was talking about with this retreat that she does every year, and she's done it for 25 years. And I have to tell you, I was hooked. I could see myself in this retreat. And so I reached out to Vicky and we started chatting. And then I was even more enticed, really, because she has so much goodness, so much experience and knowledge, and she's so well versed in so many areas of spiritual, holistic, amazing tools that I just had to get to know her. And I just knew I'd have to bring her on. So, Vicky, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
Hi, Deb. So am I. I'm excited too. It's so nice that we're all getting to know each other like we are now.
Yeah, isn't it? It's just so amazing when you're able to come together and be so supported by so many incredible women. And, you know, I just feel so fortunate that we cross paths, you know, as I have began really to understand all the healing that you've done, the modality, the books that you've written. I think it's just going to be such a treat and an honor to have you, you know, share how this all began and how it has led you to where we are today. So I would love for you to share, at whatever point you feel comfortable with, like, how did you know about, you know, like your first glimpse into the spiritualness of and who you were? And I would love to know more.
Okay. Yeah. So it started really early for me. You know, it started when I was a young kid because my mom she had a lot of depression and she would basically be away from us during the day. She would sleep during the day. She had insomnia and then she'd be up at night. And so I ended up being my sister's protector because if we woke her up, it would end up being a kind of situation that none of us wanted to get into. So during that time, I had to isolate myself a lot of times and go into my own room. And when I did, I'd go into my own world. But I had this imaginary friend and her name was Rose, and she made everything better for me, you know, so we'd go into the closet if it was feeling unsafe. Or I'd sneak out the window and I'd go into this beautiful lilac bush, you know, that was near the side of our house. And she would talk to me and we'd have a tea party and we'd talk about everything, but she'd tell me all kinds of things. Like, you know, she would foresee things. She would tell me whether or not the environment in my house was safe enough. She'd tell me what to do to make it safe, you know, so she would give me all this information. And it wasn't until, and then she disappeared when I was about 6, but she kept things light for me, right? And it wasn't until much later on, and I wrote that in my book, that it wasn't until much later on when I actually got into the work that I realized that this was my inner voice speaking. This was my intuition. And it carried over and through the years. Like I would just, as an empath and an intuit, I would just pick up things and know they were going to happen or knew what somebody else needed. And so I carried that through with me, but it wasn't until I had my own kids. You know, I was a hippie, a flower child, you know, I was out there marching on the Washington Green and protesting the Vietnam War and, you know, all of that. So I got very involved in transcendental meditation to start off with. But then very soon, I was like in my early 20s, I think it was around 21 when my son was born. And he ended up having a really bad, they gave him the vaccine early and he ended up almost dying on us. He got pneumonia. And I was very fortunate at that time. I didn't realize where this was going to lead for me, but my pediatrician for my son, he had written a book against vaccines, you know, because he worked a lot with vaccine injury kids. And so at that point, I started investigating. Like before that, I was always into the earth and I was very earthy and I would, hug the trees way back then and, be involved in all of that. But this really led me into a journey of having to discover, first this doctor me to things. But then my daughter, 3 years later, she had the same experience and it ended up creating a hearing loss for her. And she had like very bad chronic ear infections and they wanted to do an operation that I didn't want to happen because I was really nervous for her. So there was a woman that I got very close to because by then my mother had died and she was like my adopted mom. And she had a situation that her daughter had about 25 grand mal seizures a year. I mean, a week. And so she learned reflexology and she learned muscle testing and kinesiology just so that she could help her own daughter survive, right? So when she found out about my daughter, she ended up telling me, okay, look, I want you to bring her over and we're going to work on her a couple of times a day for the next couple of weeks and see if we can turn this around. And within a week and a half, everything was back in balance. Like her hearing had returned. She had no more infections. She was good to go, which made me really curious. And then she said to me, now we're going to start working on you, because I had a lot of different health issues too, right? And this was back in the 70s. This was back, I think the beginning of my practice and my education started in 1978. And I had to search out everything. And I think the universe gifted me with the physical ailments that I had experienced, because I was on the pioneer floor. There weren't very many people. Like we were running a food co-op and, we were making quiches and, go getting raw milk and, doing all that kind of fun stuff. But there weren't a lot of people in the field yet. And so this was all new. And not only that, I belonged to a congregation that anything in the holistic field looked like voodoo, or it was, demonic, or, they questioned everything. So I would always have to prove the science to them, which meant that I had to travel all around the country to get my education. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. Everything you did, you had to either learn from books or you had to go travel to take seminars with the masters, because there weren't a lot of masters during that time, period either. And I consider myself very, very fortunate in the way that where I lived in Pennsylvania, it was very progressive and there was a lot of people doing holistic health. So I got introduced to a lot of different people that were the pioneers in the field. Like when I learned the reflexology, I learned it from Dwight Byers, who's known as Mr. Footman. Like, it was his aunt Eunice who developed the Ingham method of reflexology, which was the only form of reflexology. And Dwight kind of took me under his wing. He used to always call me his flower child, and he really did treat me like his child. So he took me on the road and he trained me. And then, I started teaching seminars, and then I became their Northeast director. And I had such a curious mind, and everything that I experienced, I had to go search for an answer. And so I would have one thing and I'd have to learn nutrition, or I had to learn cranial sacral. So I go to John Upledger, or I went to Milton Traeger, and I was always on the road, like trying to figure out like what we were doing. And eventually that led to, I had my own private practice, and I've been in my private practice since that year. And I also began teaching a lot of different forms of modalities. So everything just got laced together basically in a tapestry. And I would teach others at that point. Then I started certifying people and running retreats. And, my determination was, just like me, and I think this is the most important part, and I think this is important for all of us. Just like me, I didn't want to feel dependent on the medical world. I didn't want somebody else telling me or dictating to me that this is what I had to do, to take care of myself, and just take a pill that wasn't working for me. I couldn't take traditional medicine. So I had to learn other ways to do it. I had to learn alternative health modalities. And for me, I wanted everybody else to experience that. And the teachers I had wanted everybody else. They weren't, nobody was covetous of their territory, like John Thie, who was out in California, and he's the one that started the Touch for Health Institute, and that came from Dr. Goodhart, who taught applied kinesiology. And John decided, as a chiropractor, they were only teaching chiropractors at that time, but he wanted the layperson to be able to do this. And everybody that I worked with wanted everyone else to learn how to have self-responsibility, how they could practice for themselves. So for me, anything that I learned, it was important for me to share in a way that other people could use these things and do it for themselves. So that's been my journey, and it won't end. It's still going on. Like every time I turn around and I think I know something, there's something else to learn. Like every time you think, okay, I got that one down, something else comes along, and you got to learn another aspect of it, and and then put it out there and try to teach others how to do all of this.
Well, I just find that so fascinating. I mean, you're a pioneer for those of us who came after. I mean, I didn't begin my journey until like 2001, right? I mean, really get into it in 2001. And it's amazing how many of us as young children, when we are, 6 and 7 and under, how we've all had so many of these different experiences that people just aren't ready for.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
And
well, they looked at all of this like basically being, a foreign language. Nobody understood that, because we just went to the doctor and we listened to what they said and we obeyed and we did that. And, to do things for yourself, other than, this was the other little piece though, where I lived in Pennsylvania, I lived near the Amish territory, right? And the Amish didn't go to traditional medical doctors, so they had to learn things. So when I started taking my reflexology classes, I would say 3/4 of the class was Amish, because, and they taught me a lot too. They taught me that you could use this herb for that, or you could make this kind of tea, or, you could work this little point on your foot and you could do some massage, or so I was introduced to it through people that needed to find a way to take care of themselves. And that kind of became my mission, too, was to help other people to be able to do that.
And I just think I find it so refreshing to hear about the stuff that you were trying out, always going back to the science. And now people don't dispute the science.
Yeah.
They know now for sure, from all of the years of the application, that there's been so many studies around so many of the holistic approaches. And it's, I grew up in California, Northern California. I mean, I was close to Santa Cruz, Hippieville, Berkeley, right? And so I remember people trying different things, right? Like, it's the simple things that you're talking about, when almond milk, something so simple, right? Like it was such a big deal. What's that? And now like it's everywhere. You can get it at Walmart, right? Like all the flavors and unsweetened and sweetened. And just 15 years ago, I don't remember ever seeing an almond milk in the grocery store, like something that's so common now. So,
They didn't even exist when I was starting to teach people nutrition. At that time, it was like we were searching farms for people who had raw milk. It was like, and everything was about dairy products and, having lots of cheese, but, and some of those kind of things that we didn't have almond milk even back then. Right.
mhm.
And so a lot of things have changed in our day, and it's kind of a fast forward. But what's interesting, Edgar Casey predicted this time, too, as because one of the big things that I work with in my work, and where it evolved, it started off with very physical things, like learning nutrition, teaching people nutrition, learning reflexology, even though again that was considered voodoo. Like people would look at that and say, like, how are you working on somebody's foot on this particular spot, and it's going to affect this system of their body? So they thought I was crazy, right? Until and it took me a long time to convince doctors. Like where I was in Pennsylvania, I was always going into different doctors' offices and saying, just like Eunice Ingham did with reflexology years ago, like how she started was she would go to doctors and she would say, look, give me 6 of your worst case scenarios that you're having a hard time correcting or helping them get through their disease, and let me work with them. And she would, and they would see the results. Like many people, she saved their lives. I've had that experience many times. And that's where the doctors get convinced, So eventually we got reflexologists and Reiki people and, practitioners into some of the hospitals. And it was a hard swim upstream kind of situation, trying to convince people to see that this was something real, because we didn't have the science. We have the science today. We know about quantum physics. We know about vibrational healing. But then we didn't know any of that. You had to try to explain it in a way that a doctor could dissect it. They had to understand, like, how is this working, unless I see a vial of blood, or I see your broken arm, or, something like that, and you're doing surgery. We don't understand this thing that you're doing that's invisible. And one of the cute little tools, I wish I had it right here with me, but we would use in some of our classes. I learned this in John Upledger's class. We'd use, it was what they called an energy ball. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but you would take these little balls. They look like the size of a ping pong ball, and they had contact points on each side of the ball and a battery inside. And when you touch the ball, if you only touch the contact point with one finger, nothing would happen. But if you connected both fingers, you lit up, your electricity lit up that light bulb. And so do you have a second? Can I run and get it?
Yeah,
okay,
that would be wonderful to hear.
Okay.
This is so fascinating as she grabs that, the ball. Growing up where people were trying some of this and not really understanding it.
I just had to buy some new ones because I was showing, when we were doing a group call, I was trying to show some of the gals on the call this, and I dropped the ball on the floor. So, and I teach a reflexology class this weekend, so I had to buy some of these because this was a lifesaver for me. I did a big class in New York City, and I had about 95 people there. And, the main premise of my work, Deb, I'm trying to get this little ball out of here, is that it's all about frequency and energy. No matter what we're doing, whatever material, and I know you know this, like that whatever it is that we're manifesting, whether it's material or it's our thought or every part of our body, ends up having, it's all energy slowed down. So I work a lot with sound healing, and I work with vibrational energy, knowing that everything, we resonate at a certain frequency. And when we move out of that frequency, whether an organ moves out of that frequency or a thought moves out, we get diseased. And and so there was an interesting little segment that 60 Minutes did one year, and Bruce Lipton did the same thing. And he took a heart cell, and when they divided the cell, it was still alive. And when they moved it farther away from each other, it was beating. And as they moved it away, it moved out of synchronicity. And when they moved it back together again, it went back into synchronicity. So everything we do, like any of the balancing tools that I use in my office or that I teach or on the retreats, it all has to do with finding where you've gone out of frequency in relation to whatever your problem is. And then we find out what categories you went off in, like whether it's electrical or emotional or nutritional or spiritual or structural. And you just need to find the right vibration through a particular modality or tool or nutrition, a food or a thought. What resonates, it's like the law of compensation, under and overcompensation, and like the tide.
Mhm.
If one of your systems of your body or the energy of your body has gone over energy, another one's gone under energy. And so when we introduce the right tool that resonates at a certain frequency, we bring the body back into sync, right?
Mhm.
So this is all energy work, and people didn't understand. I want to make sure this ball works. It does. Okay. So this is kind of fun. So this is the ping pong ball. And I don't know if you can see it on this.
I can.
Okay.
Mhm.
Can you see the two little electrodes?
Yes.
Okay. So if I touch the one, it doesn't do anything, right?
Mhm.
But if I touch both of these electrodes at the same time, it lights up the bulb. Okay. If I take my finger off one point, it stops. When I introduce the electricity to it, it starts to operate again, right?
Mhm.
So I had one in my reflexology class, a nurse came, and her doctor that she worked for was trying to dismiss everything I was doing. He was trying to disprove everything. So he said, well, show me where that little point on the big toe, reflex point, is connected to the pituitary gland. And I tried to explain to her that it's a frequency work, and it's an overlapping of meridians and nerves and all your circulations, right?
Mhm.
And so then I did a demonstration with her about how energy is invisible. We're not seeing it. And how all of us are transferring it from one person to another. So now this is in New York City. And what I did is I took the whole room. Okay. I took the whole room, and I held the point, the one point, and then we connected in a circle. Everybody held hands. And the last person touched this point, and when they touched this point, the bulb lit up. Anybody in that circle who let go of their hands, this went off. And then they would connect hand again, and it went on. And you could, you would look through the whole circle and you see, oh, that person just let go. That person let go. And when you connected it, it would light up again, right? So the interesting thing about this is that it also could almost measure your energy. So we sold a bunch of these balls because everybody wanted to show their kids or show their family how we light up things, right?
Mhm.
And so a couple of the people came back when at lunchtime, and they said, well, I bought this ball and it's not working. And I would take the ball and I'd touch it and it would go on again. And I hand it back to them and it wasn't going on. So I had two of my other instructors that were with me. I had them take 7 of them off to the corner of a room. And I said, okay, have them take the energy ball with them and you do the reflexology on them. And at a certain point of them doing that, the ball lit up again. So, what was happening is that person was not conducting enough electricity. And very often, I know we're getting off on a different subject, but
No,
you know,
it's fascinating.
but sometimes it would be that they were dehydrated. And for us to conduct electricity, to be a electrical frequency being, for us to be in sync with any frequency, we have to be hydrated. Because if we aren't, water conducts electricity. And so we found out that 6 of these 7 people hadn't drank any water all day, and another one was sick. So when we got her circulation going through the reflexology again and got the energy up and got them hydrated, the ball lit up again. So it was a beautiful thing for me. And, again, having computers, I said, the problem being in the course that we were in is that I felt like a dinosaur, when it came to the technology part of this. I felt like, I was teaching a lot of classes and yet this is sped up so fast that some of us that came from that pioneer time period haven't caught up to technology, so to get it out there to the world and share it was a hard thing. But when computers finally came in and when cell phones did it, that was it. Because some of my work I could do remotely. Most people would come in here, and when they first come in, we do, a discovery session that takes a couple hours usually. And we'll take their challenge, whatever it is. Like, do you have cancer, or are you going through a breakup, or are you having self-esteem problems, or you've got acne, whatever your problem is, something has gone off in your energy field. That's not some circuit breaker has gone off. And we need to determine what circuit breaker needs to be turned back on for you to come back in to function, right? And so when they first come in here, now I could explain things, because when they come on the table, I do a lot to help people tap into their intuitive side and realize that we're all intuits. When I'm doing this kind of work, what I'm doing is I'm tapping into your biocomputer, so even in that young age, with my friend Rose, at 5 years old, it's our stored information. There's 95% of our subconscious is in that, what we'd call source or biocomputer, or like in my, in the book that I did, the first couple of chapters here, I Can Breathe Again. My inner physician revealed the secret to heal myself. That I go through the chapters of helping people first learn that they are an intuit, and then to listen to that voice. And then they're able to, after they hear it, then they're able to muscle test, which is an outward demonstration. I like teaching muscle testing and kinesiology because it's an outward demonstration of what you already know. Like, we don't trust it. We get into the 5% conscious part of our brain, where the purpose of the mind is fear, doubt, and judgment and story making, right? And so we get into that part and we just keep telling the same story and going around in loops. So a lot of times we don't resolve our issues. But if we tap into that 95% consciousness, we have all the answers. Everything that we have experienced in our whole life is stored in that data computer. And so by using muscle testing, it's a way to learn how to trust that you know how to listen to that inner voice. So because what will happen is everything that engages our senses, all 5 of our senses, whether it's hearing, it's taste, it's touch, smell, thought, whatever it is, it's going to do one of 3 things to our energy field. It's either going to keep us stronger, it's going to make us weaker, or it's going to keep us neutral. So when we do muscle testing, have you ever seen that, Deb? Have you ever gone to a chiropractor and, they were doing the muscle testing?
Yeah, I did when I lived out in like Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
I was having some hormonal issues, and uh, actually she had me do some straight out muscle testing, and just like you said, she was doing more of like a diagnosis, and she was trying to figure out like where my hand
Yeah.
would drop, right? And she also did some allergy testing, like with these little different
Yeah.
types of needles that I've seen, and how my body would respond to it. So
Yes.
it was quite interesting, because that was like, I don't know, 2006, I think,
Yes.
2007. And I'd never experienced it. And it was so accurate. The stuff that she had me take, like some herbal kind of stuff, it fixed it right off. Like,
Yes.
and I took what she prescribed for me for years and years. And yeah, she was fascinating.
Yeah. It's so cool to watch, and when it gets validated, because so often you'll start doing the muscle testing. But again, the answers, we're basically intuiting, because what we're doing, and when we're doing muscle testing, we're connecting to like compatible computers. So this is what I was saying before. Like, I got so excited. I'm going to use your word, excited. Right? But I got so excited when computers finally came out, even though I didn't know anything about them. But what I did know is that with the cell phone and with computers, you were receiving information from somewhere other than being attached to a wire.
Mhm.
And people were just starting to accept that and not think that this was some kind of voodoo, that we were able to like see people on a screen like this, or to be able to get information from another computer. And so with the muscle part, we talked about a toolbox the other day, and every person is unique. So what's going to bring them back into balance is going to be different than it would for me, right? We might have some similar
Mhm.
things,
Mhm.
but you might need nutrition. I might need emotional repatterning. Like, you might need reflexology and I might need Traeger, or, every person for the same kind of thing, their energy is going to be off in a different place than another person, right? And so when we use the muscle testing, we're we're doing compatible computer work, just like any kind of computer. We're the computer that invented those computers, and we're made up of the same kind of energy. Everything is sound wave, right? So it's information that we're tapping into your biocomputer, which is source.
Yeah, and I find that interesting because I remember when microwaves came out, right? The big, huge microwaves. And I remember going with my nanny, grandmother, and she would have to look at the doors of like a store. And if it said microwave in use, right, because of the frequencies
Oh,
and
yeah,
how
yeah.
it affected her body. And so,
Yes.
connecting that in to the early days, right? Like, you don't see that now anywhere posted. Oh, microwave. Well, we got our phones, right? They're just generating all kinds of frequencies. But what's so interesting that you say that is that I think it was last weekend. I see an acupuncturist on a regular basis, and I had seen her. Well, done it for multiple reasons, but recently I've been seeing her to just move around my energy, keep it
Yeah.
going, keep up my frequency, help my vibration. And she does like some cupping, and then she, does the certain points on my back. And so I have been, and I take an Epsom salt bath multiple times during the week, because I do so much energy work, and it helps my body. Everybody's bodies absorb it, right? You know this. Epsom salt's been around forever, and it's still so powerful, right? So basic. And
Yeah.
I had this spot on one of my feet that just kept like throbbing, right? It was like, so I would go and put different pressure points on it. finally I'm like, I gotta go figure out what this is, right? And so I was in just like 2 weeks ago, one night, like looking at all of these reflexology charts, going, I need to know what this is, right? Because
Yeah.
it's trying to tell me something, and
Yeah.
I need to know what it is. And it looks like it's like the thymus, I think. It's like right in that little area. And it's one
Yeah.
of those things that you're like, okay, if there was a reflexologist here in town, I would go see them right now,
Yeah.
because my acupuncturist thinks it was my thymus. And so
You
she's the
know,
closest person I would know to,
mm,
know what it is. Right?
something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that too, so many of our modalities, because just like you, I was so curious, too, like one thing would lead to another. When the beginning of my work started with reflexology, and then Touch for Health was introduced the next weekend. And in Touch for Health or kinesiology, it's a whole system of it's based off of the meridian system. So it's a combination of Western and Eastern medicine. But in order to balance one of the 14 meridian systems, there's a lot of different components to it. Like, let's say we're working on stomach, for instance. The muscle that supports that is pectoralis major clavicular, and that has to be working right for the stomach to be working right. Then you've got the meridians for the stomach, and you've got neurovascular points for the stomach and lymph. And then you've got certain foods, and you've got time of year, you've got time of day, you've got emotion. There's so many components to making that one system come into balance with the other systems, right? And so that just sent me on a whirlwind of, all right, well, I have to understand that acupressure point. So I'm going to go take a shiatsu course. So I learn about acupressure. And then I had to learn about, well, what food was that? So then I had to go take a whole nutritional class. Then I wanted to know about the muscle part. So I had to go take a 500 to 1,000 hour different massage classes. And it just kept snowballing. Like I said in the beginning, it's one thing
Mhm.
led to another, right? And everybody is so different with what has gone off in that. But with the muscle testing, what I was saying before is that everything that we come in contact with is going to do one of those three things to your energy field: make you stronger, make you weaker, keep you neutral. And so in muscle testing, what you're doing is you're introducing any of those things. Like I could introduce a thought, and when I press on your muscle, it's going to either keep you stronger, make you weaker, keep you neutral. And so this is how we start to assess all these different categories that somebody has become diseased, right?
Mhm.
And then we're able to, from that point, create an action plan or a recipe. Like, well, we're going to do these tools, and this is your action plan for that, right? And then there's always the sabotages that come up after, that are tied into something that we have to
Yeah.
learn how to, break that pattern too.
Yeah, I think
But
it's so fascinating. And I talked with somebody who, on an earlier podcast, and she was talking to me about the link, which I found fascinating. I read when I eat
yeah,
a book, right? Like I've done this for as long as I can remember. And she was telling me about the connections between my eyes and my digestive system,
yeah,
about how I'm actually making it super hard for my digestive systems because it's doing double duty. And
yeah,
so it got me going on like, wow, what if I did an experiment for 30 days and didn't eat, right? And I have literally, what I've realized, because I thought, well, that won't be that hard. I I am struggling. It's like an addiction. I have not been able to go a meal without reading at least a couple sentences. And I thought, oh my
we
gosh, like
all,
the connections, right? Like I
yeah, the
thought, wow,
patterns.
that like a pattern that is developed, right? I have to create some new neural pathways for my brain and what to do just to simply sit there and eat. Like,
Yes.
like who has that kind of time? But I thought to myself, wow, like this is going to be significant because, we were just trying to, I just thought, wow, right? Like having all these menopausal things. And now that it's been years, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at different things. And so I think, wow, I really am fascinated by your work. I just think it's fascinating, right? So,
Yeah.
so now if somebody is interested in what you do as I do, because you do things in person and you do things online,
Yeah.
what are you doing now? What are you offering out to people if they're interested um, in working with you or getting to know you more? What would you suggest, Vicki?
So, well, I have a website, it's harmonyhealth.net. And on there, you have all the information of how to contact me. I list a lot of the events. I'm on Instagram, and Facebook. And what I've been doing, part of why I ended up writing this book is my clients had asked me for, over 25 years to explain my process, because to me, this kind of work for me is like a tapestry. It's taking
Mm-hmm.
all these tools and integrating and putting them together. So people can buy the book, they can get an idea of the kinds of things that I do here. You can find it on Amazon, or if you want my hard copy signed, sealed, and delivered, you can get my contact information, call me, DM me, I can do all that. But one of the things I'm doing, like kind of a pre-launch right now, also about a membership, because my Facebook page is Harmony Healing Arts. That's my business, is Harmony Health Center, but it's Harmony Healing Arts. And so they can find me on Facebook, Harmony Healing Arts, Vicky Graham. And I'm doing under Harmony Healing Arts a membership called Surviving to Thriving, Daily Doses and Weekly Whys. And the reason I decided to do this is that there's so many pieces for me to teach. And so I was going to break down all of these different categories. Like if it's about emotional, like we'll spend a month on that and go through, like interviews with experts. We'll talk about tips for these things. I'll get on and show demonstrations of how to do some energy routines and do the nutrition, do, some of the different kinds of modalities, and sound is another one that that was kind of a surprise to me. I don't know if you have a minute yet on this one. Are we winding up?
No, I want them to hear because I'm a huge lover of sound healing.
Okay. So let me tell you another little story. I think you and I talked about this another day, but so this is kind of where I'm focusing in the beginning, because I want people to have simple tools that they can use passively in the background while we're chunking out something else. You want to walk away with something that's not too hard while you don't have an understanding yet of what all these things are. Like to have one kind of tool that you don't have to think about that's going to work for you. And how this came about was in 2005. So I had been into my practice for quite a while. And I went through menopause. I had a head-on collision. I had a really bad bout of Lyme. And I always have to figure these things out after, then you get like a whole crowd of people that come to you with Lyme or whatever it is. And because of all those things, I developed a huge thyroid tumor, and they thought it was cancerous. And the doctor that I had said, we have to take out your thyroid and we're going to take out your voice box because it's attached to it. And I said, no way are you going to do that without me. I teach too. I'm not going to just do this without trying something. So I did the muscle testing like I teach people in these routines. And I came out like some things like doing reflexology or some nutrition, but my top thing, which I taught in the Touch for Health class and used it some, but it wasn't my main tool. And it came out that I needed to use sound healing. And this is back in 2005. So it wasn't popular yet. People were just starting to learn about sound healing. And I wasn't even, I had some tuning forks, I had some bowls, I was playing with it. I do a little bit in the office. but it wasn't my main tool. And I had to resonate to the throat chakra, which is the tone of G, and for 45 minutes twice a day. And it was a hard thing to try to do that, like between your tuning forks or pitch pipes or trying to follow those tones on CDs. So I found another endocrinologist because my doctors let me go. They said, if you're not going to do this, we're letting you go. And I went one more place and I said, look, I'm not going to be doing this conventionally. I just really need a doctor to support me in this, to run some of the tests. And he stopped me in mid-sentence and he goes, well, that's your throat chakra. What's going on with that? And I thought, oh my goodness, here's a regular doctor like saying, this is your throat chakra, right? So I said, well, this is what I'm going to do about it. I have to resonate to this tone for 45 minutes twice a day. And let's see where it goes. And he goes, okay, let's try it out and let's see how it goes. So I went into a recording studio. A friend of mine had a recording studio. And I said, I need the 12 tones of the 7 chakras broken up into 3-minute tracks so I can just like repeat it over and over and over again. So we started with mine. We started with G, and I did it twice a day and for 45 minutes. And within 1 month, this huge tumor that I had was completely gone. So it definitely made a believer in me, which then caused me to go on and study this more. And then, you know, I ended up producing this, the Sound of Balance Vibrational Healing, which breaks down all the tracks. It has two CDs in it. One contains the sounds of the 5 elements, and that's a whole other story. I'm not going to get into that. But this breaks down the tones. And what was cool is I had no idea. I had no intention of producing a CD, you know, like that was going to go out there and be on like CD Baby and iTunes and Spotify and, you know, all those kind of things, right? I just needed it for my tool. And then I was getting, when I would teach some of these sound balance workshops and retreats, I was getting people from all over the world saying, I needed to let you know we're using this in our hospital and we're having like amazing success, you know, and things coming back into resonance. Because when you just introduce the tones of certain energy centers of your body, it brings it back into harmony so that when it's resonating at the right frequency, then it can send out the right signals to do its own healing in the areas that it's affecting. So it's a passive way of being able to like listen to it in the background when you're doing dishes or when you're driving the car, or you focus on it, you know, with your intention or your affirmations or your visualization. And it just is a good passive tool to go in the background when you roll up your sleeves and have to do the other work, right? So
oh, I love that. I love that. And you know, I don't think we mentioned your book though, is I Can Breathe Again was your book, which I'll put in
the
show notes so that everybody is aware of it. But you know, we could keep talking forever because there's so much to the practice. So we'll put in the link too of I Can Breathe Again. And then is the CD, The Sound of Balance, still available, Vicki?
Yes.
Okay.
So I actually, it's now it is on Amazon, and I do have links. I have links to the book and I have links. And if somebody wants a hard copy, you know, because everything is streaming now, but like I've got probably 3,000 of these, you know, the next year we started with streaming after I did the CD so everybody could have, but if they want a hard copy, they can get it directly from me or on Amazon, you know, too. But they can, you know, I've had a lot of the people that I've been doing these sessions online through our group, you know, is helping them out, just figuring out in relation to what they were working with, which chakra was blocked, which one was depleted, and what was their life center. And in doing that, I had them just go download the individual tracks, which they could do off of either Apple iTunes Music, or they could do it off of Amazon. You could buy the individual tracks. So you can buy the full CD. I don't care which one you do, but you can buy the full CD or you buy the tracks. But it is good to have somebody do a session with you at first, or read the information in the book so that you understand, you know, the system, the process to actually put all these tools together, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, if somebody wants to do a private session, they can, you know, look me up either way, you know, Facebook, on DM.
Oh, well, I think you just shared so much super useful information that, some real super practical stuff and a history
Thanks,
that
Jen.
others may not even be aware of, just how far each decade has brought us into how much easier it is to actually use these tools, all of the science, um,
Yeah.
you're sharing your own processes. I can breathe again. It's super, super beneficial. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a delight. And I'm going to
Thanks,
share all
Jen.
of your links in the show notes and for the
Okay.
CD or the link, if they want to go get it on Amazon or iTunes, as well as the book. So thank you so much, Vicki, for
You're welcome. Thank
sharing
you,
so much
Deb.
information. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Okay.
Great getting to know you, and
Yeah.
look forward to us sharing more.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.